Thanks for joining us at 6. I'm Mark McPherson. Today, a bipartisan bill requiring schools to promptly alert parents if their students are the victims of sexual misconduct in schools unanimously passed the Assembly. Our Wisconsin State Capitol Bureau Chief Vanessa Kelson was at the Assembly floor session and has the takeaways.
On Thursday, the Wisconsin Assembly overwhelmingly passed numerous bills focused on public safety and crime. A bill for transparency receiving applause from both sides of the aisle.
It's appalling as a parent and as a legislator that there's nothing in state statute right now that points out a specific timeline of when a parent must be notified if sexual misconduct occurs.
Assembly Bill 74 would require schools to alert parents about sexual misconduct at schools within 24 hours of it being reported.
If there is an accusation that my child is a victim of sexual misconduct, I have the right to know.
The bill also requires school boards to provide information every year on how parents can make open records requests regarding staff misconduct.
It is a measure to ensure that parents are no longer kept in the dark.
The Assembly also moving a bill forward to require prosecutors to get a court's approval to dismiss or change charges if the person is charged with crimes like domestic violence or car theft.
In the legislature, we can pass all the penalties we like, but it won't matter if the justice system doesn't apply those penalties.
But all Assembly Democrats who voted were against the measure.
Democrats are serious about safety, but the majority of bills in front of us today are not.
On National Canine Day, the Assembly also passed a bill increasing the felony charge for anyone who kills or injures a police or fire canine.
Mr. Speaker, as Canine Riggs would say, the vote is woof.
From the Wisconsin State Capitol, Vanessa Kelson.
Next, the sexual misconduct and canine felony bills head to the state Senate for a vote. Meanwhile, the court approval bill will need its third reading in the Assembly before moving to the state Senate.